describe it as anything that is related to the creation of businesses that are in the AI space or digital assets. Look for ventures that are already producing revenue and not just, saying we're going to add on here or there. BitTensor was a clear winner because there's already people generating real revenue within the BitTensor network. There's only going to be 21 million tokens ever minted. It was an easier pick amongst the crowd of shiny objects.
We are diving into the critical intersection of traditional capital markets and Web3 infrastructure, focusing on how businesses can build real, sustainable value in the digital economy.
The analogy I like to give is everyone have an iPhone or an Android. Subnets as the applications themselves, because they are operating on BitTensor, but they all have their own unique purposes.
Hello everyone, this is Kripa Anand and welcome to the CanadianSME Small Business Podcast, where we explore the strategic insights and innovative solutions driving growth in today's rapidly evolving financial technology landscape. Today we are diving into the critical intersection of traditional capital markets and Web3 infrastructure, focusing on how businesses can build real, sustainable value in the digital economy. In a world where digital assets and AI are reshaping every industry, understanding how to strategically invest and build scalable platforms is paramount. Our guest today brings over a decade of experience in alternative investments, the exempt market, and capital markets, with a proven track record in private credit, real estate, and digital assets ventures. Joining us today is Matthew Priebe, CEO of NextGen Digital Platforms Inc. Matthew is a founder and leader dedicated to building long-term shareholder value by investing alongside the digital economy. His mission is to bridge traditional finance with the opportunities presented by Web3 infrastructure. So before further ado, let's welcome the special guest. Matthew, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Matthew, NextGen is on a mission to bridge traditional capital markets with Web3 infrastructure. This is a crucial concept for Canadian businesses. So let's start by understanding, where did the story begin from? What is Web3 infrastructure? For all the laymen out there, how would you describe it to them?
I would describe it as anything that is related to the creation of businesses that are in the AI space or digital assets.
Wow. So what does that then mean for bridging traditional finance with digital assets, especially in practice for SMBs?
So traditional finance and digital assets have often lived as two separate worlds. So traditional finance in particular and cryptocurrencies, they've been very different crowds. And we've seen as of late, those have been coming together a little bit more. But usually when they come together, it's just by way of investment in the underlying assets. So we wanted to bridge the gap by actually investing in the infrastructure that's underneath the Web3 or digital assets themselves, in particular with BitTensor, and do so in a way that's productive in the AI space. So actually generating real revenue in AI companies.
Wow. So what advice would you give to our listeners who are SMBs about generating revenue ventures beyond just buying and holding crypto? What's that actionable advice you'd give to them?
Well, actionable advice for any business would be to use tools in order to improve your own revenue. So there's many simple tools out there you could use to improve your revenue or shorten your tasks. If you're a business that's actually looking to expand and build in the AI space itself, look for ventures that are already producing revenue. They have a clear target audience. They have a clear client list.
Right.
And they're going out there and actually winning contracts as opposed to just building hype around the underlying asset.
That's a very clear and compelling mission, Matthew. It's clear that the focus is on utility and real business models within the global economy. That's great. Now, let's explore how NextGen selects its strategy in a market filled with shiny objects, as they say. Now, the digital asset space is filled with thousands of projects and technologies, and your ability to select a strategy and focus is key. So, with so many opportunities in digital assets and traditional finance, how exactly do you choose the right strategy? amongst the noise. Yeah.
It's a really good question because, as you mentioned, there's a lot of shiny objects, especially in cryptocurrencies and digital assets as a whole. And so when I joined the business prior to joining, I was speaking with the board, and they kind of asked which cryptocurrencies and assets I was bullish on personally. And BitTensor was a clear winner because there's already people generating real revenue within the BitTensor network. So your question about how do you select it? I think you select it by seeing what has real utility in the real world, and not just saying we're going to add on here or there. Actual actionable businesses that are generating revenue today, and then on top of that, maybe some asymmetric upside in the asset itself. So in particular with BitTensor, there's only going to be 21 million tokens ever minted. That's it. So it's the same supply cap as with Bitcoin.
Right.
So there's a real scarcity there, and they're already generating revenue today. Many of the businesses on the BitTensor network. So it was an easier pick amongst the crowd of shiny objects, I guess.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those other shiny objects, they don't have real utility today.
Very interesting take. But I also understand that NextGen's acquisition of micro tech platforms is, delivering long-term shareholder value. So what does that exactly mean?
So I believe the acquisition strategy is a good one because you get to capitalize on teams' unique experience in their own markets already.
Right.
There's teams out there that are already doing things better than we're doing them. So if we can acquire them and use their expertise and bridge that with our capital markets expertise, our marketing expertise, and our sales experience, and actually the ability to build and win contracts, then I feel like we're going to leapfrog others who are having to build from the ground up. We don't know what we don't know, but these teams that are already doing this in real time and making revenue, I think that's a great place to start.
That's a powerful and I'd say a disciplined approach, Matthew, because it highlights the importance of strategic selectivity in a fast-moving market. That's great. Hello, Canadian entrepreneurs. Are you looking to understand the real utility of digital assets or how to strategically invest in the AI and Web3 space? Learn from Matthew Priebe, CEO of NextGen Digital Platforms, about bridging traditional finance with the digital economy and the power of disciplined investment strategy. Now, let's continue our conversation with Matthew. Now, let's discuss a key digital asset that NextGen is focused on. And you also mentioned previously the BitTensor. And, it's model for real utility and value. So, for all the listeners, firstly, please explain once again, touch on it again. What is BitTensor?
Sure. So, the analogy I like to give is everyone or most people have an iPhone or an Android.
Right.
So, that iPhone or Android, they have their own operating systems, whether it's iOS or otherwise.
Right.
And within your phone, there's many applications you use. Google Maps, whatever it might be.
Right.
Those applications have real utility, of course. That's why we use them. And they also generate their own revenue. So I like to compare the BitTensor network or ecosystem to the operating system or iOS on Apple, and the subnets as the applications themselves, because they are operating on BitTensor, but they all have their own unique purposes or uses. For example, a subnet that we like to look at, it analyzes video data from sports games, and it sells that data back to the respective sports clubs for predictive analytics.
Right.
So your question about the asset we selected, we've selected BitTensor because of these many applications and their utility. And also, as I mentioned before, there's a scarcity of supply. There's only ever going to be 21 million coins minted. There's no VC allocations that are getting to skip the line. There's no internal team allocations that are getting to skip the line. So it feels like the perfect network and asset because there is scarcity, there's a chance for appreciation, and there's real world use.
That's a fascinating take on it. What exactly do you think this says about the long-term potential of digital assets beyond this speculation?
Yeah, good question. I mean, as you know, there's tons of assets popping up left and right.
Yeah.
And we've seen a few cycles in cryptocurrency, but I think the markets are starting to wisen up and realize that there's very few that are true stores of value. I believe Bitcoin's a store of value. And the others are going to have some utility to survive, in my opinion.
Right.
And so as a business that's investing in that space, we can't just be buying and holding that asset anymore. I don't think any company can. You have to be investing and building in the underlying infrastructure. Right. So we're not just investors, we're builders. And we need to make sure that we're taking that very seriously, which we are.
Wow. one thing is clear that you're focused on projects with foundational utility, right? So kudos to you for doing that. All right, it's time for a quick break right here, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a short while.
Hey, you think you know UPS? Yeah, that's us. Everybody knows that. You know what you didn't know? This. Okay, try to keep up. Ocean, us. Ground, rail, air, so us. Guess who? Us. Customs cleared, borders cleared, done. Us. You still with me? Wait for it. Boom. Us. Intelligent, automated, fulfillment. Us. Yep. Healthcare too. Digital your thing? Yeah. Well, book it, ship it, track it. You feeling me yet? Yep. That's all us. That's all UPS.
Welcome back, guys. Thank you so much for staying tuned. Now, let's continue our conversation with the CEO of NextGen, Matthew Priebe. Now, let's talk a little more about leadership, delegation, and your personal story, because you have a powerful personal story about the intense hustle of your early entrepreneurial days. I understand, you ran a landscaping company and worked at a golf course starting 5 a.m., which eventually led to burnout, right? So, what was that story, and how did you get into entrepreneurship from there?
You're going way back. I mean that's when I was 12 years old, and
Oh,
so I think from 12 and into my career, there's obviously been many steps along the way, and a lot of that was in institutional foreign exchange and in different sales-based roles, real estate as well.
yeah,
What I realized amongst all those is that it's very easy to be busy.
Hmm.
There's always, you can always be working long hours, but it's more difficult to be self-reflective and also critical of making sure that you're using your time well and actually delegating that to other people. So fortunately, through all the different ventures, going back to the golf course, which you mentioned, but more importantly in my corporate career following, I've learned to lean on people that already have great expertise
Hmm.
in their particular field.
Right.
And I think that's translating to my leadership at NextGen and the business as a whole. Because as I mentioned, if we can acquire businesses that already have really good knowledge in their particular space
Yeah.
and build on that with our knowledge,
Right.
it'll be extremely helpful for us.
Well, very well articulated. What's that one thing you enjoy the most about entrepreneurship or running a business?
Learning about people,
Hmm.
and businesses. And it's so interesting how everyone has their own story and everyone has created a business in their own field.
Right.
There's so many fields to explore, of course.
Right.
And so it's nice to have a genuine curiosity for people. And that's leading us to build a strong team and make our shareholders lots of money.
Wow. On point. Let's do a little time travel now, Matthew. If I were to give you a time machine and say we were to travel 5 or 7 years into the future, when you get out of the time machine, how exactly do you envision next gen changing the world around you?
I envision it being the go-to name for those that want exposure to digital assets with utility. I think that means we'll have accumulated a large quantity of digital assets themselves, like BitTensor, Bitcoin, and will also be known to have helped and built a lot of businesses on that network. We aren't just investors. We are builders in the space, and we
Hmm.
want to make partnerships with people that are building as well and have the same ideals as us.
Wow, that's a very forward looking perspective, and I love it. Definitely, we're going to invite you one more time, Matthew, where we can dive into such deeper discussions. But for now, before we let you go, if there's one piece of final advice that you have for our listeners today, something that you want them to remember about Matthew, about this episode, about Next Gen, what would you tell them and why?
I'd say we're focused on building a good business relentlessly,
Uh huh.
and we're not paying attention to the noise out there and the shiny objects. We're paying attention to real revenue generative businesses
Yeah.
and making sure that our shareholders are happy with our efforts.
Wow, that was Matthew Preview, guys, from Next Gen. Thank you so much for being on this podcast. It was such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that was an insightful conversation with Matthew Priebe, CEO at NextGen Digital Platforms Inc, on bridging traditional finance with digital assets, the real utility and value of BitTensor, strategies for diversification and delegation, and NextGen's global vision and future outlook. To all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. We really appreciate your continued support. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more expert insights and resources that can help your business thrive. Also, don't forget to visit our website, CanadianSME.ca. And lastly, a very special thank you to our podcast partners, RBC, UPS, A1 Global College, ADP, and Google for their ongoing commitments to empowering SMBs in Canada. So until next time, keep innovating and striving for success, and we'll see you in the next episode. Kripa Anand signing off.